guys, welcome to my channel. If you haven't seen my intro video, I'm Kaylee, and today I'm going to be talking about 3 books that I'm currently reading. So let's get started. Hi, so let's get started. The first book that I'm going to be talking about is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. I am currently halfway through with it right now. I'm currently on chapter 21 out of 40. So far it is pretty good. It started out really well. Of course, this book is about a young girl by the name. Sorry. I can't pronounce her name, but it's Emmanuel. If anybody had read this book before, correct me on that. I'm sorry, but it's of course about a young girl that's been like shunned by a few people that kind of like sit here and speculate on a few things because of her mother, because her mother had, of course, died giving birth to her, and of course her mother kind of had disappeared for a while, but she ended up coming back. Her mother did, from like a part woods where it is like forbidden for anybody to go in the village that they're in, because of course like the title I'm sorry, but like the title says, Year of the Witching, of course, which will sit here and involve around witches. So, the woods that her mother had came from is, of course, inhabited by witches. That's their domain, while everything else is, of course, for the people that, of course, go. No witches. Of course, in this little town, there's like a little religion, I think I want to say similar to Christianity, somewhat, because they have a prophet that like sits here and sees visions and everything, and so on and so forth, with prophets or apostles and everything. And of course, there was a little holy war going on in the beginning where this village was created. So there's this little patch of woods where the witch's domain is. If you go in it, you don't come out. If you do, you either go nuts or, of course, coming out of the dead body. But her mother ended up going into these woods, didn't come back for a while, but she ended up coming back about 8 to 9 months pregnant with our main character. So when it came time, of course, for her birth, of course, her mother ended up dying at birth, giving childbirth to her, and she was basically like the black sheep of the family with this, but she was also loved as well. But as the story goes on, she started getting curiouser and curiouser about her mom and the woods, because like somewhat in she's like sitting here starting to hear whispering from the woods and everything. So around this time she had like further into the book, her grandfather ended up sitting here saying, hey, take this sheep to market, sell it, because of course there was some things that had transpired like around the time when she was younger, and even before she was born. So of course he was like shunned from like their little church, because her grandfather was part of the church, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but part of a church. So he was shunned from there, and of course he's older, he's getting sick and everything, so he's like, hey, we don't have any money, blah blah blah, because of course he has other mouths to feed because they're like younger kids. So he's like, hey, take this sheep to markets, try to sell it for some really good money. Of course, the road she takes is literally passing these woods from where her mother had disappeared into. So, of course, she walked past them and she's kind of weary of them a little bit. She's sitting here thinking about the woods and everything, and her mother a little bit. She got to market. She tried to see her best she can to sell the sheep, or the ram, or whatever. If you guys know more about that kind of stuff, let me know in the comments. But of course, after like a while of her being in the market, and of course, start getting end of the day, she's like, okay, I need to start heading home before it gets dark. So she couldn't. Of course, she wasn't able to sell the goat / sheep. So of course she's heading home, like, she was literally halfway home. She was near the woods. The sheep started losing its crap. And ended up tearing out of her hands and running into the woods. She ran after the sheep. Of course, ended up losing it, and she ended up coming across the witches that roamed these woods. And of course, I think it was two out of the 4 witches that reside in the woods. So those 2 witches end up sitting here giving her a journal from her mother. And of course, she started sitting here freaking out, blah, 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 blah. She's still freaking out at this point. She started running again, but she ended up running into the ram, who was dead now, because something happened. I think whatever was in those woods got a hold of the sheep. So, she ran out. The person that helps this family with the sheep and everything, because, and then, well, she normally, of course, takes care of the sheep and everything, but she had to go to the market to sell the ram / sheep. But he had seen her come out, and she ended up sitting here. He had to, like, go get someone in her family members to come get her. Of course, she ended up sitting here getting punished for it. So, because she ended up getting punished for it by a hot iron on her hand. But of course, that didn't stop her. She ended up going back in there in the middle of the night one night, because she started, I want to recall that she started hearing whispering again, and that ended up, she started hearing commotion and everything from outside, so she thought it was the sheep. The sheep are in distress, so she's like, oh, I'm running out there. But the sheep were fine. They were just chilling, grazing in their paddock, not giving a care in the world. Yeah, I honestly couldn't really give a shit either if stuff was happening, but as long as I'm fine, I'm fine. But still, yeah, so of course she's like, what the hell, like, you guys are fine, what's going on? But she's still hearing it. She notices it's coming from the woods. She ends up going into the woods. Of course, at this time, she read her mother's journal. Of course, there was like a lot of scribbles in it, a lot of drawings, because apparently her mother was very talented at art. So, going into the woods, coming across the other 2 witches. One of them ended up, somewhat, I want to say, take her to, she came across the 3rd one, and then the 4th one, who was Lilith, because of course, if any of you guys, know about Lilith, you know that But of course, Lilith was, of course, in this book, from what I understand. If you guys read this book, correct me, please. Is of course the first witch, one of the first witches. So, the other three, of course, are three of her disciples and everything. And of course, she ends up coming across Lilith, and some things happened. Though there was also a pond she was also near. The other witch, who was, of course, the water witch. I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sorry. It's I haven't picked this up in a while, and of course, since I'm like further into the book, I somewhat remember what happened. But that witch ended up dragging her into the water and everything. She ends up getting lured into the water and drug under. And of course, she is about 16 years old. She had her first monthly, as some of you women know. Her first period, or bleed, as they know it. She didn't have, from when, of course, the time when she was supposed to get it, and now, she ended up getting it when she was dragged under the water, and of course, when she was under, she, of course, had a first period, which was, in the water. So, of course, with that kind of, like, caused, like, a little plague. A little sacrifice. Like, Satanists, of course, have to have a sacrifice to Satan or whoever they're worshiping. And of course, her first bleed ended up being a sacrifice to Lilith. And of course, there are like 3 to 4 plagues in this book. And the first one is, of course, which her mother actually rambled on in the journal. And she's like, Emma Moyle didn't understand what was going on in it. So it's just like, I don't know what these words mean, but okay. I'll keep them in mind. And then, she ended up having her first period in the water, and then she didn't even think anything of it. She ended up fainting halfway through because, she ended up getting out of the water. She ran, then she passed out. Then she ended up waking up in her little parlor in the house. She managed to, of course, she thought she was dreaming, but, she ended up lifting up her nightgown and seeing blood. So she's like, oh crap, blah, 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 blah. She ended up waking somebody up, and they ended up helping her, and of course, so on and so forth. She was, of course, out in the field with her sheep, and then talking with the heir of the current prophet, and she heard screaming. Both of them ran, and of course, the well is full of blood. Of course, which is one of the first part of the book is called Blood. And of course, the first thing that her mother ended up sitting here rambling on in the book, like, blood, this. She's like, then she sat here and realized, like, oh shit. She's like, I'm the cause of this first plague. So, I don't want to say any more, but she does end up sitting here, ending the plague. She's like, I need to figure out how to do this. She's like, oh, she ended up doing some reading on it. She kind of had to sneak into a library. Yeah, that light just turned on, I'm sorry. She kind of had to sneak into a library where it's forbidden for, I want to say, women of her stature, or anybody. The only people that are allowed in that library are, of course, the prophet, the apostles, of course, men, I want to say. Basically, men are the only ones allowed in there. Um, she came across a section where it's like kind of restricted. Like, of course, there's a restriction area. So she kind of, the person that helped her into there, um, helped her get in there and everything. They ended up going through these books. She found out what she was looking for. She ended up going back into the woods um, to try to stop the plague because, of course, blood, the water turned into blood, everything. There was no water, everybody's thirsty. Their animals are dying, all that. So, she ended up stopping that, and then the second plague happened. So that's where I'm at now. I just started that part. So another plague had started like literally a couple of weeks after she had ended that one. Once she found out that she was the cause of it, she's like, "Oh crap, I'm the cause of this plague." Blah 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 blah. She ended up sitting here, going back in, stopping it, and now a couple weeks later, another plague started. So that is it for that. I'll do a review on that, tell you how I feel and the rest about it, but of course I still also don't want to spoil the rest of the book as well. If you want to read it, it is called The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. So yeah, so not on to the next book. So my next book I'm going to be talking about is called Read on Right by Sarah Welk Bainham. It is actually the third book of her little equestrian suspense novels that she has, and it is currently the third book that I'm on. I'm 37% through it because I'm reading it on my Nook. Not my Nook. I had a Nook when I was growing up, so I'm so used to saying Nook. But I'm reading it on my Kindle. If you're interested in it, and you have Kindle, the Kindle Unlimited, it's all 4 books are sponsored by Kindle Unlimited, so you'll be able to sit here and get it for free. But like, of course, let me just start out with what the story is about from the first book, which is called Impelled. In the first book, it starts out with her being in college, the main character being in college, starting out in college, because the main character was going to college to be a barn manager or equestrian barn manager or something like that. If somebody knows more about that, just let me know down in the comments. But halfway through, things start happening to where she couldn't afford her tuition because the loan that she had, of course, is now invalid because one of her parents had gotten a job at the time when she first started school. She was almost done with that school. She was literally so close to graduating college when all this started happening. So she had 2 choices because one of her friends actually had one of her friends had this, have this happen to her, but she had done this option. She had one of 2 options. Try to get another loan out, and of course, her pay it off, or quit school and become a working student. So she ended up deciding to sit here and become a working student, and the barn that she had grown up at, she ended up telling the person that had helped her train her and everything, had supported her through everything, and she ended up deciding to sit here and tell her about it, and at this point she had her own horse. She had recently just gotten her own horse around this time. So, so when she had told her trainer this, she's like, okay, I'm supporting you on this, blah, 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 blah. So she sat here, decided to do this a working student for a barn down in Ocala, Florida, which is like a really big, if some of you don't know, is really big equestrian based world. Well, basically which from what I understand is like basically the capital of the equestrian world, as well as Wellington as well. So all this has now been put down in Florida. Her and her horse moved down to, thankfully she was able to bring her horse. She moved down to Ocala where she was working. Of course, it's basically like a little internship where she's just basically sitting here shadowing the trainer / barn manager at this farm. She's doing it, and then more shit hit the fan. I'm sorry for my mouth, but still, stuff hit the fan. Then the second book is called, let me bring it up. Impulsion, which basically somewhat picks up for where the book ended, which I'm not going to say too much because I don't want to, about what the ending happened, because I know, because I don't want to sit here and spoil anything. It's somewhat picked up from where the ending of the first book happened. When everything happened in the last book transferred over, she ended up actually completing her working student internship, whatever, with the barn she had originally came down at. Somebody that she knows had talked to their aunt, and the aunt ended up contacting her saying like, hey, do you want to be the manager of my barn? I'll get a barn up here in Ocala, because she ended up really liking Ocala, being up in Ocala and everything. And of course, at this point, there's a guy which is the nephew of the aunt that had sat here and asked her to be the manager for, and somebody else that had and a person that she had worked with back at the barn she had previously done her working student stuff with. She was starting to have feelings for him, and then when more stuff had hit the fan, she ended up falling in love with the nephew, and of course there's love triangle had formed in the first book. And then the second book, the nephew and the main character is of course doing their thing, still seeing each other, but the thing is, they have two separate lives, and of course they are hours apart. So of course, as everybody knows, long distance really sucks. Like me, I had tried to do a long distance before, but of course that didn't work out. Of course, this love triangle had formed between her, the guy that she had worked with at the barn she had done her working student thing with, and of course the nephew. She's dating the nephew while of course sitting here having feelings with him. Something happened between her and the guy over here, so of course all that is guilt ridden and everything, and so yeah, I'm not gonna say too much. And then the third book that I'm on, the nephew ended up breaking up. Her and the nephew ended up breaking up because a lot of stuff had happened between then and now, where I'm at now, and she ended up trying to go to this guy, but other things happened, and to where she, like, the nephew ended up proposing to her after, like, a traumatic experience, and she's just, like, sitting here, like, I don't know how I should feel about this. Let me think about it. She just left without a trace, not even telling um, the coworker that she still has feelings for, um, and some stuff happened, of course, between them. So they also have a friendship too. So he's just like sitting here confused, like, what the hell? And she also has a friend that she ended up going, leaving with. Her friend actually went to tell him, and of course he was hurt. So, so some things happened, and when she ended up coming back, she finally sat here. When she came back from that little week vacation, she came back, went down to Wellington, officially broke things off with the nephew, and then she was kind of just like sitting here hesitating, trying to talk to the guy over here. So now it's just like, and now the, her and the guy, or, she managed to sit here and talk to the, guy over here, and, I'm sorry, so, but she was hurt from her leaving without a word from herself, so when she finally sat here, broke the ice, tried to talk to him, of course, he was still sitting here hurt. And when she's like, hey, can we talk? He's like, oh, now you want to talk. So it's just like, okay, like, this is what was going on. And she sat here and explained, like, hey, this is what was going on. I had to sit here and think. He proposed to me, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, really? You literally had to go sit here and think about it. That tells me you were considering it. So, of course, he was in here hurt. He's like, Emma, I think was her name, but the main character, she ended up sitting here saying, like, oh, can we try to make this work? He's like, no, give me some space. Let me think things through. And, of course, 2 weeks went by. No word, just a little glare, because of course he was still sitting there hurt. Like, if some guys, you guys know, like, Mike can be a little stubborn, but still, so there's that. It's just, of course, I'm on book 3 right now. I'm gonna sit here and give like a full-blown review on that when I finish all 4, but otherwise, there's that, and there is one more book that I will be sitting here talking about. So the third book that I'm gonna be telling you about, which I literally just started today, is Promises and Pomegranates, of the series Monsters, the first book of Monsters and Muses of Sav R. Miller. As you can tell, since it has pomegranates in it, of course it is pointed toward Greek mythology. From what I've read and of what the somewhat of the book is, it's basically wrapped around Greek mythology. So I am about 6% in right now, because I also have that on my Kindle. That series is also part of the Kindle Unlimited if you end up wanting to sit here and want to read it as well. But there is 2 POVs where they alternate each chapter, they alternate each chapter and tell their side of the story and everything. And so far it's very confusing to follow, but I will be doing a separate video for that at the halfway point. So this will be the end of the video. Like I had said with the book that I just this last book, I will give an update on another day when I get halfway through. Probably about when I'm on probably like chapter 10 or so is when I'll sit here and give you an update on how I feel about it. So right now it's just dragging on and it's very confusing. And as well as it's been a while since I actually sat here and had 2 POVs. So yeah, so I hope you guys liked the video. I'm sorry that this last book isn't really long enough, but still, I hope you guys liked the video, and I will give you guys an update on this last book in a while. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.